vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing 5 awesome live albums that are in my vinyl collection. Live albums can be a really cool entity of sorts. It can be a representation of what a band does live. It can capitalize on a successful tour and album cycle. From a personal standpoint, it can serve as a long-lasting memory if you went out and saw a tour, and it can recreate a live experience. Now, that last reason that I mentioned kind of adds a little bit to the myth of live albums being truly live. Depending on the performance, if let's say it wasn't as great as it could have been and there were some mistakes, bands will go back into the studio and fix those mistakes up, and that kind of causes a little bit of controversy in terms of what live albums are truly live, but it's all down to the artist and what their intent is. Some are dead set on having things be absolutely live, no doors reference intended, and just have everything be warts and all, let the mistakes be there, and just truly recreate a live experience. So, depending on which side you're on, personally for myself, I'm fine with either way, because as long as it's done right and it really recreates the atmosphere and the excitement, that is where I'm at. Now, the 5 albums I'm going to showcase in this video are not ranked in any particular order. These were just the first 5 that really caught my attention. So I do apologize if I miss out on some notable ones because there are so many great live albums out there. But that's not to say that this is going to be the only video that I do on this topic. You might see some follow-up sequel videos on this channel down the road. But what I'm going to show is what came to mind first. And the first album that I am going to show, I think, set the benchmark of what live albums are supposed to be all about. It stands as my personal favorite live album, and in my humble opinion, the best live album of all time. What am I talking about? Kiss Alive. There's so many reasons why I think this album stands as the best live album of all time, but you gotta also look at it also in a historical standpoint. At this period, Kiss had just released their first 3 albums. None of them sold exceptionally well, but they developed an extremely good live reputation. So who is to think that a live album would resurrect their career and, of course, benefit them financially, pay off all their advances, go platinum, and basically be a benchmark of what was to come later on with albums such as Frampton Comes Alive and other albums that would soon follow. Now, this album does include some studio trickery. It has been on record many times that they did go back and fixed up some vocals and some guitar leads and whatnot. As far as I know, I think the drums is the one element from the recordings that stayed intact. That's not to say that everything else was touched up on. There was probably some bits that worked really well from the original live recordings, but regardless, it's exciting. The explosions are there. Eddie Kramer, the producer on this, who worked with Jimi Hendrix and Zeppelin, did a fantastic job recreating the hype and the excitement of when you see these guys. Visually, obviously, it's not there, but when you listen to it, you can really sense it. You know, the audience is really amplified a little more. They do use some sounds of explosions because it does get distorted onto the original recording, but that doesn't matter. It's all about the recreation of the live experience. And of course, I'll showcase the packaging as well. You have the excellent front cover, which features the band in all its glory and action. And then you have a really cool backside of 2 teenagers holding the Kiss poster there, which is still out there. The exact same guys went to see Kiss and Cobo Hall in 2009, and they brought that poster with them. And of course, this is where the back photo was taken, because this is where a large portion of the album was recorded. And you have a really cool gatefold, which has handwritten notes from each of the guys. And of course, these were the 3 albums that were out at the time. And of course, this features a beautiful booklet with all kinds of photos of the band. And here's a really cool centerpiece with a photo montage with the flames. More pictures, and it is absolutely delightful. The version that I have is the 2014 reissue, where Universal did the entire Kiss catalog back onto vinyl. and this sounds absolutely bombastic. So if you get a chance, hunt down this version. This is absolutely great. But that right there, number one, Kiss Alive. And up next is a half live, half studio album. I'm going to be focusing on the live aspect of it. This is my second favorite band. Many people would assume that it is my all-time favorite band, but I just love buying their products because they're of amazing quality. This is Pink Floyd's Ummagumma. This came out in November of 1969, and the live part of this album is a really great representation of the Floyd in a live setting, because the songs that they do on here, there's only 4 tracks on the live portion. You have Astronomy Domini, Careful with That Axe Eugene, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, and Saucer Full of Secrets. The studio versions compared to the live versions, there's no comparison. They really took those songs on an entirely new level when it came to what they were doing in the live setting at this point in their career. So, like, there's a whole little keyboard solo in the middle of Astronomy Domini. The version of Careful with That Axe Eugene is just the most absolutely explosive version that I've ever heard. They kind of add a little ethereal break in the middle of Set the Controls, and they really intensify the ending of A Saucer Full of Secrets, because the studio version has just the organ, but the live version has drums and a full band arrangement, so that works really well as well. And plus, it's just awesome to have a document of the band at this time frame and doing what they did live before they went on to do Dark Side and other notable works. And up next is another top favorite live album of mine, in my opinion, and I believe this is probably one of my favorite albums of this particular band. And this is another one of those classic live albums from the 70s. This came out after Alive, years later. This is AC/DC. This is the album If You Want Blood, You've Got It. This was done on the Powerage tour, so this was 1978. Single LP, 10 tracks, and holy hell, what an album this is. Starts off with Riff Raff, then you have Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, and then you just have literally all the standout tracks that the band had at this period. It's not all of them, but it's a good representation, because then you also have Bad Boy Boogie, The Jack, and then you have the song High Voltage, Rock and Roll Damnation. The version of Let There Be Rock on this album is probably the definitive version that is out there, because like in the verses, and then when you have the little guitar solos, then it kind of dissipates and jumps back into the main riff. It is absolutely explosive sounding, and it's just absolutely awesome. AC/DC's If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Up next is another classic 70s live album. This is the first live album that this band has done. Lots of live albums in their catalog, and this came out just a little under a year after Kiss Alive. And this is kind of like another narrative in terms of the historical points, and when it comes to comparing it to Kiss Alive. This is the best Canadian trio out there. This is Rush. This is All the World's a Stage. This was recorded on the 2112 tour at Massey Hall in Toronto, so this was kind of a homecoming of sorts. Basically, they started out, first couple albums kind of tanked, but then they did 2112, and that really gave them their artistic freedom, and it just set them off onto new heights, and this album captures that excitement quite excitingly so. So you have tracks like Bastille Day and Anthem, Fly By Night, Something for Nothing, and then you have a slightly edited version of 2112. You have By Turn the Snow Dog, Working Man, Finding My Way. I mean, this is just classic early period Rush, and it just sounds absolutely great. Rush is also a rather good band in terms of recreating their recordings live. So I don't think this really required much trickery. I think this is a natural sounding live album. And the packaging on this is absolutely great as well. This is a triple gatefold sleeve, which has all kinds of photos of the band playing live. And kind of similar to Alive, they have a little catalog there, which has all the albums that they had at the time, as well as the credits. This is the 200 gram version, and Sounds absolutely mighty fine to me. So let's put this back in the sleeve, and then I'll showcase what I have next. Alright. And the last record that I'm going to showcase is an album that came out years before Kiss Alive. And this stands out as a particularly excellent live album from the late 60s. The band themselves consider this particular live album to be their first live album. I'll explain a little bit as I go through this particular record. But this right here is Get Your Yayas Out, the Rolling Stones in concert. This was recorded in Madison Square Garden in New York in 1969. Single LP, but quite, cut to the throat, no nonsense track listing. You have Jumpin' Jack Flash, you got Carol, Love in Vain, Midnight Rambler, Live With Me. Oh my god, what a raunchy song that is. Love it. Honky Tonk Woman, Street Fighting Man. So the track list is very much them, coming back to their roots, because they did the whole Satanic Majesty's Request thing, and then they did Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed. So the track list on this is very reminiscent of that current time frame that they were in. But like I said, they referred to this as their first live album because in the US, we got a live album from the mid-60s called Got Live If You Want It. And as far as I know, there was a lot of studio trickery on that. And I think the band themselves weren't too pleased with it because I think it was just a US contract obligation. This is a recent reissue, which absolutely sounds fine. And for the sake of showcasing cool pieces of vinyl that I have in my collection, this is pressed on clear vinyl. And this is perhaps maybe the most clearest piece of vinyl that I have in my collection, which is mighty fine, and it sounds absolutely wonderful. So if you ever get a chance, seek out this version. Sounds great. That right there are 5 awesome live albums that are in my collection. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the record spinning.